whiplash.
Good afternoon and welcome to the March meeting of the Johnson County Community College Board of Trustees. Please help me start the meeting with our Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you for coming this afternoon. Our first item of business is roll call and recognition of visitors. Ms. Sleesh.
Okay, this evening's visitors include Roberta Eveslage, Paul Snyder, Frank Sotolar, Dick Carter, and Morgan Dye.
Welcome to our meeting. The next item on the agenda is our open forum portion of the agenda. Open forum is an opportunity for members of the community to provide comments to the board. There will be one open forum period at every regularly scheduled board meeting. If there are more than 5 speakers, then the chair has a right to limit them to less than 5 minutes. In order to be recognized, individuals must register at the door and are asked to remain at the podium, be respectful and civil, and to refrain from discussing matters related to individual personnel items at the college. As a practice, the college does not respond in this setting when the concerns or the matter concerns personnel issues or matters being addressed through our established grievance procedures, suggestion processes, or are otherwise subject to review by the board. I have nobody signed in today in the open forum session, but that is an opportunity at each meeting to have our community input if anybody wants to do so. The next item is awards and recognition. Dr. Sopcich.
Tonight, Trustee Musil, we have none.
Okay. We will probably have some national championships to celebrate next month.
Hope so.
Student Senate report. Donnie? I didn't see Donnie.
There's no students in the report.
Oh, they're on spring break. Okay. Student Senate report is everybody's doing well. Probably warm somewhere. College lobbyist report, Mr. Carter. Welcome from Topeka.
Can I be on spring break?
Well, you could never tell the difference.
Well, we're giving the old Lisinopril a workout this week in Topeka to see how things are going. So if I fall over backwards, you'll know what to get the pads out. We tried to cram all of March into this week at the legislature in Topeka, and I think that they're doing a very good job of it. There literally are back-to-back doubled-up hearings on multiple bills trying to meet that next turnaround deadline, which is essentially the first adjournment of the legislature. And I talk a little bit about the deadline dates at the end of my update. But really, it's like we're starting over the legislative session. It's sort of a do-over, if you will. We spent the month of January churning through different budget scenarios, different tax bills, and nothing happened. And we came back after legislators took a week break at the end of February, beginning of March, to sort of start over. We're not much further down the road right now in the way of either a rescission budget or a tax plan, but I think there are constantly conversations going on behind the scenes. The good news is that state revenues are up $64 million in the combined months of January and February. I always say that with a little bit of reservation because I find it necessary to remind you that we've adjusted those figures down so many times that I mean, it looks good, but we shouldn't get overly hopeful. I do think that the next month's report will also show that we're ahead of schedule as well. So that is, in fact, good news. While legislators were on break, the Supreme Court released their decision on the adequacy portion of the school finance case. Legislators still have some work to do there. They did not give a figure that the legislature needed to come up with. They did give a date by which the legislature should submit a plan to the court, and that date is the end of the fiscal year, June 30th. That's a little bit concerning to those of us who participate in the process because we already know that the legislature has approved extra days of meeting as far as their budget is concerned to be paid. They are known for always using everything that they approve to the days to meet, and sometimes then some. So we'll see what happens. I do think that there is the one thing that the court was clear about is that there needs to be a new funding formula. And I do know that the House has a committee that's been working on that very thing since the beginning of January, and I do think that the House will be putting out a product fairly soon that helps address what school finance looks like moving forward. And it may be very different than what we've been accustomed to in the past, but it will be moving away from the temporary block grant model that we've seen over the past few years. With regard to the budget, I don't think it's a secret. The House and Senate have both passed a couple of tax bills. The governor vetoed it. The House overrode the veto. The Senate did not. I do think that there's just a couple of tweaks there that before the Senate would be able to pass that bill. Whether or not the governor signs another version that is very similar to what is passed remains to be seen. The thing that he mentioned that he was concerned about was the retroactive nature of some of the taxes that were included in the tax package. That is the excuse that the Senate used as well by not overriding the veto. The Senate Ways and Means Committee has kicked out a rescission bill that, and I won't go into the details of the mechanics, but just some of the high notes, and these are things of concern, borrows about $165 million from Capers over the next few years, sweeps money from the pooled money investment board. They say that it leaves about a $50 million ending balance in the current fiscal year, so that allows for some padding for numbers that may not come in the way they need to. And presently in that rescission bill, there are no cuts to education. I say presently because we're aware of a few amendments that will likely be suited up on the Senate floor when they debate that bill. I mentioned briefly a little bit about the property tax lid. Again, we are not covered under the bill that passed in 2015 and the updates in 2016, but it's always something that should be on our radar screen. In fact, right now, they just concluded a hearing in the House Tax Committee on a coalition bill that would seek to change the election process if a budget is to be increased to a protest petition, which is very similar to how the law operated pre-2015. So we'll see what happens there. That was in the House. The Senate this morning had a hearing on a bill that would be a full repeal of the property tax lid. I don't think there's a single person in Topeka that expects that bill to even be discussed anymore after this morning. Let's talk a little bit about some of the gun issues because we've been involved in some of the hearings at the State House. Presently, things are not moving forward. The Senate Federal and State Affairs Committee worked the employer immunity bill earlier this week and then immediately tabled it. That means that bill is essentially dead for the session. There are still bills alive and able to be moved around in the House Federal and State Affairs Committee. I'm not sure that the will is there to do that, but I will say that there are conversations, and I think I may have reported on this. I can't recall if it was a conversation or if I reported on this last month, but there are conversations that are going on with folks in leadership and with industry representatives to find a reasonable solution on some of the concealed carry issues. Just this week, you may have read some headlines about the mental health institutions in the state of Kansas suddenly raising some concerns. I guess it doesn't matter that they came to the table a little bit late. They're now at the table. That extends that conversation. I think that we'll see a product come out before. It may be in the veto session, but I do think we'll see a product that folks can live with. I can't tell you what that looks like right now because I don't know. I'm just picking these little bits up from conversations that we hear from folks that are involved in the conversation. So I'm hopeful that we'll have a reasonable solution and that it'll allay some of our fears or concerns on this campus. It allows us to implement a policy that makes sense. But more to come on that particular issue. I do think that the bill that will be the vehicle for all of these things is a bill that I haven't talked to you about. It's just a simple cleanup bill from the Attorney General's office. It seems to be the only non-controversial bill out there, and so that bill will probably be kicked out of the House Federal and State Affairs Committee, and it may sit around for a while before some amendments go into it, and it's worked in a conference committee process. There will be some changes to the Post-Secondary Technical Education Authority bill that came out of the House. It's over in the Senate right now. I have a sense that there will be some proposed changes in that bill when the committee decides to hold hearings on it. It hasn't been scheduled yet, but that is something that we anticipate in the near future. I suppose that really is sort of it in the way of things that are being discussed or talked about on the higher education level. There's just one final thing that I'd like to close with, and that is we haven't done this in a while, what I'm about to talk to, but we co-sponsored with the City of Overland Park, the Overland Park Chamber, and the college, the Johnson County delegation lunch just this Wednesday. It gave us the opportunity to sit down with our electeds here in Johnson County and really kind of just have a conversation. Trustee Musil presented on behalf of the college just a few points, told the delegation about our, I just went brain dead, the things that we approved, our statements of principle.
Legislative statements of principle.
Our statements of principle, which then opened the door to some additional conversations. Trustee Sharp was in the building and joined us that day. We had folks from the chamber and folks from the city there as well. It was a great conversation at lunch, and one that has not been held with the delegation in quite some time. We had a little more than half of the delegation present, and that's a good number. There are a lot of things that are pulling at those folks. We had a number of people who were in leadership. There were leadership meetings that they could not get out of. So I was very pleased with the turnout, but even more so, and I told Trustee Musil that I was going to say this because he may have some comments after I finish. We arranged for a meeting in the Speaker's office. We also arranged for one in the Senate Majority Leader's office, but ran out of time. The clock didn't work to our advantage. It is one of the best meetings I've had in a leadership office in the past 8 to 10 years. And we went in really with no particular agenda, and the conversation was healthy and robust, and I think everyone left feeling incredibly hopeful. And I'll just leave it at that. And Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you have additional comments, but
I'll save them till you're completed your report.
I've completed my report.
First, any other questions for Dick on other legislative items? Go ahead, Jerry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What was the Senate vote again on the veto? I mean, what on the override? How many did they miss it by?
We were shy three votes. I think it was 24.
So 24.
Thank you.
We did have a great meeting yesterday with the Johnson County delegation and then with Speaker Ron Reichman Jr. Thanks to Dick and Kate for setting that up, Stephanie for being there as well. The delegation lunch was good because this year people are willing to listen and ask us our advice on things that affect community colleges and not just go by rote or just go by bullet points or talking points. It's a very good atmosphere that permeates the entire Capitol this year. The meeting with the speaker was particularly interesting. I think, Dick, you said he spent 45 minutes with a group of 8 of us from the City of Overland Park, the Overland Park Chamber, and then the community college, and that is a lot of time to get with a speaker of any legislative body. Speaker Reichman spoke, I think, honestly and candidly about the fact he's a process person. It's not necessarily the speaker's job to railroad anything. It's to let the process work. And I was particularly impressed that he spoke to the fact that the courts actually have a role in governing the state of Kansas, and they're part of the process, which we haven't seen for a number of years. I'll go on to mention that at 4:30 yesterday, 4 o'clock, 4:30, for the first time in 5 years, the Supreme Court Chief Justice was allowed into the House chambers to speak to a joint session of the House and Senate. The last 4 years, I think, wasn't it, under the previous speaker, the House and Senate were too busy to allow the Supreme Court to speak toward the issues of the judiciary. And yesterday, a very warm welcome from the legislators there, a short but informative remarks by the Chief Justice. The entire Court of Appeals was there, the entire Supreme Court was there, and it just felt like something that ought to happen in any governmental institution in America if you want to serve the people of the state. So I give very high marks to Speaker Reichman and Senator President Wagle in that instance too, who was also there presiding. It was a good day in the State House after many years of not really wanting to talk to anybody, and not talking either across the aisle or within your own party. So I might mention, you talked about rescission budget. A rescission budget is a budget for this fiscal year that ends June 30th that typically involves cuts to programs in the last few months of their fiscal year. So when we say rescission, we mean cuts, or
Filling the
borrowing
hole.
from CAPERS or borrowing from the Pooled Money Investment Fund. So it sounds like it's just budgeting as usual, but what it means is we're in trouble with our revenues and we need to do something. It's ironic that now that the revenues are exceeding the estimates, nobody claims that the revenue estimators are idiots. We've lowered our estimates enough that revenues are exceeding estimates, and now everybody's on board. I think I'm maybe more cautious than you about the guns on campus issue. I think there may be some movement on not allowing concealed carry into the University of Kansas Hospital, for instance, or into mental health facilities that are owned by public institutions. I'm not optimistic that that's going to extend to higher education campuses. I think there are too many opportunities out there for those who supported concealed carry to have votes that would be used against other legislators to get something like that through this year. I hope I'm wrong, but I think there's a sense that there will be some compromises. I'm not sure they're going to affect us the way we would like. And the other thing, I guess, on that note is last week or the week before, a bill was introduced that would prohibit this board and the Board of Regents and every other community college board from doing anything that would in any way affect how somebody carries their concealed weapon on campus. We have proposed a policy that has some very reasonable things in it, I think. Things that I understand are on the NRA's website, like don't carry a loaded, don't have a bullet in your chamber, have it in the magazine but not in the chamber, carry it on your person, carrying it in a secure holster, things like that that would be eliminated by the bill that was proposed, which I assume is not going to go anywhere, but is a signal to everybody that don't ask for much relief from the current law because we could make it worse. So that's my high note to end on. Any other questions or comments, Dr. Sopcich?
Dick, for the latter bill that Trustee Musil referred to, we submitted written testimony.
We did, and the Faculty Association also spoke to that bill as well.
All right. Thank you. It'll get busier before it gets lighter, I'm sure, in Topeka. Thank you, Dick. We'll move on to committee reports. The first item is the audit committee. The only audit committee item is that this month's, the minutes from the last meeting are in our packet at page 1. I reported on what we actually talked about at last month's meeting, so I will not belabor that. Collegial steering met earlier this month, and we spoke very philosophical discussion about the challenges to higher education. And I think the way I would sum it up is we talked about how to promote a skilled workforce in a very holistic sense, so that skilled means I know how to do X, whether it's HVAC or nursing or whatever, but I also know how to speak and write and read and think and calculate and communicate. Those other skills that employers are demanding, more so than just I can weld this widget to that widget, or I can stick this circuit board on that particular place. And the challenges to that, and how we might go about how we're doing a good job in certain programs, how we might do a better job in the future. And I don't know, Dennis, Dr. Arjo was there, maybe he'll speak to that during his Faculty Senate or Faculty Association report. Any questions on collegial steering? If not, we'll move on to learning quality. That was to be Mr. Cross. Is that Trustee Sanday?
Human Resources?
Yes. I'm sorry, I skipped human resources. Do you want to do human resources? Or is there anybody here to do human resources?
We didn't.
It did not meet. Okay, Trustee Ingram and Trustee Cross are both out of town on business events. So, okay, we'll move on to learning quality then.
Very good. Chairman, report on Learning Quality Committee of March 6, 2017, 8 a.m. Meeting in room GEB 137 as follows. Those present were Trustee Lee Cross, Trustee Henry Sandate, Chris Gray, Judy Korb, Barbara Larson, Kathy Marin, Mr. L. Michael McCord, Vince Miller, Rick Mooring, Dana Smithers, Melinda Bryan Smith, Joe Sopcich, Mark Van Gorp, Sandra Warner, Randy Weber, and Tanya Wilson. The monitoring the learning engagement process updates on academic programs. Mathematics and Service Division update presented by Celia Zininsky. Dean of Mathematics and Science Division gave a PowerPoint presentation highlighting the activities in both divisions, including enrollment trends and several grant initiatives. Upcoming events for the divisions include Science and Math, poster session to be held in the CoLab on April 28th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monitor the learning engagement process, educational planning and development initiatives, grants, leadership, and development update presented by Melinda Bryan Smith and Anthony Fornari. Melinda Bryan Smith, Director of Grants, Leadership, and Development, and Anthony Fornari, Grant Professional, gave an overview on the grant research and funding processes. The current and future opportunities for grants at the college were discussed, as well as statistics on approved and denied grants. Monitor learning outcomes, affiliation, cooperation, articulation, and reverse transfer agreements. Affiliation agreement, L. Michael McCord, President, Vice President of Academic Affairs, CAO President, presented a new affiliation agreement with the Kansas Transitional Care Center, which will provide clinical experience for students enrolled in the practical nursing program. The agreement was approved by the committee. Complete details can be found subsequently in the consent agenda portion on March 16th board packet. Monitor Learning Outcomes Curriculum, presented by Mark Van Gorp, Chair of Educational Affairs Committee, EA, presented several curriculum changes to the committee for their review. For the Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences Division, effective academic year 2017-2018, course modifications included GDES 120 and GDES 130. Course designation approvals for general education included MUS 128 and PHIL 128. For the Computing Science and Information Technology Division, effective academic year 2017-2018, course modifications included CS 134 and CS 236. A program modification included 2930-AAS and computer information systems. For the English and Journalism Division, effective academic year 2017 and 2018, course modification included ENGL, English 254, and GLUR 122. The requested modification will be sent to the full board for approval and can be seen subsequently in the consent agenda on March 16th board packet. Monitor student development, student life, leadership, and development activities. The athletic department update presented by Randy Weber, Vice President, Student Success, CSAO, gave an athletic department update. College administration has been evaluating the role of overall commitment to athletics for the past several years. With anticipated increases in travel, salaries, cost of scholarships, and additional support requests from existing programs, JCC plans to discontinue its track and cross-country programs at the conclusion of the 2017-2018 academic year. Current student athletes will be afforded an opportunity to exhaust their NGCAA eligibility next season. Those who have signed letters of intent to enter as freshmen next season will have the opportunity to complete at JCC for one season, or they can request a release waiver so they can participate for 2 years elsewhere. That concludes the report.
Thank you, Trustee Sandate. Anybody have any questions on learning quality? If not, Management Committee, Dr. Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The committee met on Wednesday, March 1st at 8 a.m. A large delegation of folks were there, as always, staff and trustees Lindstrom and Cross. We had a number of reports. Melinda Bryan Smith, who's the Director of Grants Leadership and Development, gave a report on the process of how the grant process works and reported that we've exceeded $3 million in the grant portfolio this past fiscal year, and as we know, that supports instructional innovation and scholarships. Rachel Lears, Associate Vice President of Financial Services, gave us an update on the 2017-2018 budget. We have a A more detailed report on that in our April management meeting, and we'll have our budget workshop held at the April board meeting, so we have those events upcoming. They did meet on March 2nd following our management committee with Paul Welcome to have an update, Johnson County appraiser to have an update on the appraisal values, and we know how important they are to our budget process. Mitch Borchers presented the sole source report, which can be found on page 5 of your packet. Again, to remind folks, those are bids awarded between $25,000 and $100,000. Barbara Larson gave an update on our facilities master plan. You'll recall that we approved that plan in October of 2016. We had 2 tiers. Tier 1 involved 4 projects. Tier 2 involved 5 projects. And as the administration has reviewed the working timeline of those projects, it was concluded that perhaps we should add a few things to Tier 1. The athletic facilities, Trustee Sandate has talked about our decision to alter some sports. But in that whole front door entryway where our athletic facilities are, we felt that it would be very cost-effective to include some of that renovation with the front door project. And so we've added that to the project, and we think that will gain a lot of efficiency in how our front door looks, and will eliminate some additional cost later on if we did that in Tier 2. Rex Hayes provided a monthly update on capital infrastructure project, and this report is found on page 9. We do have one item of recommendation. It's found on page 6 of your packet, and it has to do with the bid for architectural and engineer services for the Career and Tech Ed Arts building and renovations. You can see that we sent out, I believe it was 64 bids you'll see on that page. We received 10 bids. This is a rather large project. You can see who the 10 firms were that responded to the bids, and as your report indicates, BNIM, DLR Group, HMN, PGAV were asked to come in for presentations, and that was done. The review committee went through extensive evaluation of those presentations and of the costing project, and we do have a recommendation for you. And so I would like to recommend of the Management Committee that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation of the College Administration to approve the proposal from BNIM for architectural and engineering services for the Career and Tech Educational and Arts buildings and related renovations at the rate of 5.75% of the actual projected guaranteed maximum price, construction cost, with the final agreement subject to separate board approval of bond issuance and receipt of sufficient bond revenue to fund this project, as well as review by our college council, and I'll make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the recommendation to approve BNIM for architectural engineering services as stated. Are there any questions? Not all in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my report.
Any questions for Dr. Cook? Not, we're ready for the president's recommendations, starting with the treasurer's report. Is that Trustee Lindstrom?
Yes.
Thank you for filling in for Treasurer Cross.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to present the treasurer's report in Trustee Cross's absence for the month ending January 31st, 2017, which can be found on pages 14 to 28 in the packet. Briefly, here are a few highlights. On the first page is General Post-Secondary Technical Education Funds Summary. As of January 31st, 58% of the college's fiscal year had expired. The college's unencumbered cash balance as of January 31st in all funds was $112.7 million. Excuse me. An ad valorem tax distribution of $50,076,886 was received from the county treasurer during January and distributed as follows. The general fund received $47,248.02. Special assessment fund received $178,692, and the capital outlay fund received $2,650,192. Also during January, state operating grant payments of $10.2 $10,345,445 was received and recorded in the general post-secondary technical education funds. Expenditures in the primary operating funds are within budgetary limits, and it is the recommendation of the college administration that the Board of Trustees approve the treasurer's report for the month ending January 31st, 2017, subject to audit, and I would make that motion.
Second?
Been moved and seconded to accept the treasurer's report for audit. Any questions or discussion? Not all in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Dr. Sopcich, monthly report.
Thank you, Trustee Musil. First of all, if you haven't had a chance to review the monthly report to the board, even starting on the front page, it's very exciting. It talks about the Collaboration Center. To walk by there and to see it full of students and the excitement that's going on in there is really fantastic. It's truly taken off and has been a place where students and faculty can convene and advance the success of students. A few things here as we're on pace for a record-breaking time. First of all,
Any questions?
and that concludes my report. We have our, a little bit of March Madness ourselves. First of all, as Trustee Cook alluded to earlier, both our men's and women's teams are in postseason play. Our Cavalier men's team will be at Danville Area Community College in Danville, Illinois. That's on the eastern side of Illinois, next week for the NJCAA Men's Division II basketball tournament. Our District 5 winning Cavaliers, who own a 24-8 record, will play Parkland College, who are 27-3, on Tuesday, March 21st at 5:30 p.m. These two teams are rated 5th and 6th in Division II when it comes to free throw shooting accuracy, and ranked 11th and 12th in three-point accuracy. Expect plenty of three-pointers to be dropping like rain when they get together. We will be making our 5th appearance in the tournament. Our last appearance was in 2012 when the Cavaliers came away with a tie for 9th place, and in 2001 and 2009, head coach Mike Jeffers guided those teams to national championships. Our Cavalier women's team will be playing at North Arkansas College in Harrison, Arkansas. Our Lady Cavaliers are 30-2. They are the number 2 seed in the 16-team tournament field. We open against Lackawanna College, who are 19-10, from Scranton, PA, the home of the Office television show. Steve Carroll might be in attendance at the game. The game starts at 3:00 p.m. on Tuesday, March 21st. So women's play at 3 and men's play at 5:30 on the same day. The number 1 seed is our good friend from Iowa and fellow league school, Kirkwood Community College. Their record is 33-0. Our Lady Cavaliers will be making their 11th appearance in the tournament. Our last appearance was in 2015 when the Lady Cavaliers claimed the 2nd national title in team history by defeating number 1 seed Parkland 66-64 on a buzzer-beating shot by Alexis Brown. Some of you were in attendance to see that historic moment. We hope Coach Ben Conrad can come up with some similar magic this time around. Spring break here on campus. Special thanks to all those connected with the annual spring rituals of trimming the trees, working on the flower beds, and attacking a variety of construction and maintenance projects around campus. With no students around, now is the best time to get these chores done. Special thanks to Rex and his team for helping to make our campus so beautiful. Their efforts will become especially apparent in May when we're all here for graduation. So thanks, Rex. It's looking fantastic. We had great participation in this year's Innovations Conference. This was held this week in San Francisco. From our college, I believe Lou Guthrie presented on behalf of the Benchmarking Institute. Anna Page from our honors program presented. I even got to facilitate a panel in a special day-long president's track. But for me, the highlight was observing the presentation called Roadmap for Intrusively Engaging Students to Program Completion and Beyond. That was presented by members of our staff here at the college, Deb Elder, who's the Assistant Dean in CSIT, Gretchen Shirk, the Director of the TACT Project, Denise Griffey, Mindy Swartz, Linda Dubar did a heck of a job as career coach talking about some of the things they do, and Kayla Harity, all a part of a special grant. The presentation featured workflow design and an intrusive advising roadmap. Through this accelerated and collaborative technical training program, students are better prepared for program and completion and placement. We have around 200 students utilizing this program. The focus on students, I mean, they did a great job of putting pictures of our students on screen and talking about their accomplishments and their challenges, their lives, and their successes, and it really distinguished it versus other presentations that I saw while at that conference. So they did a wonderful, wonderful job. Yesterday, we hosted the naturalization ceremony. The U.S. District Court for the District of Kansas naturalization proceedings were conducted in Yardley Hall. 397 people from 71 different countries were sworn in as United States citizens. The ceremony was watched by friends and family who filled up the hall, and we even had a number of people in the overflow, I believe in Carlson Center 211. Judge James P. O'Hara presided over the ceremony, and I got to say, it took a campus to deliver this event. Special thanks to our police department, our Carlson Center staff, technical support, video services, marketing, conference services, housekeeping, the business division, Terry Schlisch, and Anita Tebbe. Anita Tebbe is the real force behind making all of this happen and getting it to our campus. And also, our very own Paula McLaughlin sang "God Bless America" to open the session, and she closed with the Star Spangled Banner, and she has an amazing voice. I think we should use her at trustee meetings, kind of pick things up a little bit. Maybe the next time. And lastly, this morning I'm on the way in, and I heard a special report on KCUR about ways that our college is pursuing the accelerated completion agenda as directed by the Kansas Board of Regents. Did any of you hear that report? It was really outstanding. I have to say, Vin Clark was interviewed and did a heck of a job describing the steps taken by our faculty to do whatever they can to help students succeed here. And Vin has a wonderful voice for radio, absolutely terrific. Dr. Randy Weber was the compliment interview, and he was equally as outstanding on the radio, describing what services are being offered to our students to give them every chance to complete. And also, thanks for marketing, for working with KCUR to make this as powerful as it was. It was a fantastic radio segment. I bet that thing went on for at least 5 minutes, and it was terrific. But I have to say, Vin and Randy make quite a team on the radio. There's Simon and Garfunkel, Martin and Lewis, Johnny and Ed. Greg and Stephanie. And now we have our own Vin and Randy. So thanks a lot for doing such a great job with that radio segment. And that concludes our report.
Questions for Dr. Sopcich? Trustee Lindstrom?
Not a question, but a comment. I'm sorry I missed the naturalization ceremony, but I was coming home from south. I was out of town and had the radio on, and the radio gave it great publicity too. So I'm sorry I missed it.
No, Anita gets that here almost every year, and usually there's only around 200 people to be naturalized. We had almost 400 yesterday. It was so exciting, from 71 different countries. It was just a wonderful, wonderful event.
On the radio, they actually interviewed some of the people who had become citizens as well.
Yeah, all their families are out in attendance. It's really fantastic.
I was going to say that I saw a picture, I guess it was from the balcony, and I mean, it was just filled. I mean, it was maximized, the attendance, and it was just an incredible picture. I mean, to see Carlson Center and all those people there and the whole procession.
And it comes off so smoothly because of the people here who make that happen. I mean, it's quite a feat because of the security requirements and, a federal judge. And of course, that topic's kind of a hot topic. So it was just an outstanding day.
Thank you for speaking. You didn't mention, did you mention you were the keynote speaker at the event?
I got to speak, yeah.
Naturalization ceremony. Anybody that hasn't been to one of those, go to one, because I think unless you're Native American, somebody in your history was sworn in at the same type of ceremony. And I've had the opportunity to go to those, and they're very powerful events. So I'm glad we can host that as part of our community service. I should also mention, last night, Dr. Sopcich and I had the chance to attend a dinner in Topeka that was hosted by the Kansas Board of Regents of the community college and technical college presidents, and then the chairman of each of their boards, their governing boards. And so there were probably, well, that'd be 26, if everybody had everybody there were 52 people there, plus Kansas Board of Regents and staff, so probably 60 people. The Board of Regents is trying to find better ways to have its board, the 7 members of the Board of Regents, have more direct connection with the board, the governing boards of the various colleges and universities in, well, I guess the universities don't have a governing board, but at the community college and technical colleges, and ask for ways they can do that and ways they can be more transparent with us. And I think all of us could better understand their role, since it's limited, but it's important in their governance of the community colleges. So we sat at a table with president of Pratt Community College and the Board of Trustee, a member there who has been chair but isn't chair now, and the president of Highland Community College, along with a staff member from the Board of Regents. And if we ever needed to be reminded that our community college may be slightly different than other community colleges in the state, that kind of event tells you that. Pratt has about 400 students, 72% of whom are athletes. Highland has 800 students on campus and 3,300 on its total enrolled students around its various local communities where it has a presence. So we are different, but it tells us about the diversity of Kansas and why it's sometimes really hard to work together to promote the same goals. But I appreciate the Board of Regents doing that and reaching out to do that. Do you have any comments?
Well, I thought it was interesting when some of the trustees from the other colleges talked about serving on the trustees for 20, 30 years. It's pretty incredible.
Seriously, as a 5-year member, the average service of trustees there was probably over 20 years. And many of them had been chair of their board for 10 years off and on. So it is a very long seniority in some of the other colleges, and not saying it's good or bad, it's just that it was different in those smaller communities. All right, let's move on to, there's no old business or new business that I'm aware of. Reports from board liaisons. The first one will be from our favorite faculty association president this year, Dr. Dennis Archo. Dennis?
All right. Well, thank you. As always, it's a privilege and pleasure to address you. It is spring break, so things have been kind of quiet in the faculty area. Our meeting last week, we had our general membership meeting. I think it lasted 20 minutes, so nothing really to report there. So just a quick update on a few things. As Mr. Carter indicated, we did file written testimony regarding the bill, the most recent one in Topeka, that would have limited any ability of our local bodies to pass any restrictions or policies about guns. Melanie Harvey, the vice president, also gave oral testimony at that. And for what this is worth, she did tell me that she shared an elevator with a legislator. I don't think she told me which one, but it would not be one that would be on our side of this, or at least the position that the FA has taken. But this person did indicate a certain willingness to maybe compromise and was somewhat conciliatory, so that was at least something hopeful. Secondly, it was very good to see we're moving forward with the facilities master plan and the architect. We're still very excited to see that come to fruition. We look forward to future opportunities for seeing how it unfolds and also having input and getting the people who will be occupying those buildings involved, talking to the architects and so on. So that continues to be very exciting. Lastly, I will say just a little bit about the collegial steering committee meeting, which was pretty interesting from my perspective, being kind of in the core of the humanities and philosophy. It's always very nice to get a chance to kind of promote our side of the educational endeavor and try to make the case for, from my perspective at least, that there really is no sharp divide between humanities and other aspects of education. Everybody is more than just what they do in a job. We like to think eventually we'll come to the same questions that we have the privilege of spending our careers studying and writing about and reading about and talking about. So it was a very nice opportunity to have that conversation with administrators and board members. So that's all I have. It's kind of quiet these days.
Questions for Dennis? Thank you for sticking around on spring break.
Nope, no problem.
Reporting to
Actually,
us.
I'm not really here. This is an actual privilege.
Oh, that's-
I'm in a beach in Baja, California, drinking a pina colada.
we could have met you there. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the good work of our faculty. All Okay, Johnson County Education Research Triangle, trustee Lindstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I start, though, you made a comment about the tenure of some of the other boards. This community college has a history of board members in the early stages being on for long periods of time as well. So I don't know that that's so much different here. Now the board tenure is a little bit shorter, but anyway, I'm pleased to present the report for the Johnson County Education Research Triangle Authority, or JCERT. Because the authority has not met since our last meeting, my report will be brief. I am pleased to report that sales tax receipts for February were $1,720,272.58, which is up from the same time last year, 11%. Mr. Carter mentioned that $64 million on the state revenue, so maybe there's something happening there. The next meeting of the Johnson County Education Research Triangle will be on Monday, April 10th, 2017, at 7:30 a.m. at the K-State Olathe campus, which is 22201 West Innovation Drive in Olathe. And Mr. Chairman, before I conclude my report, I'll just direct anyone who wants more information about the Triangle to go on the website. Again, it's www.jocotriangle.com. And that concludes my report.
Great. I appreciate you mentioning the website, because we take for granted sometimes how much good this 1/8 cent sales tax has done over the last almost 10 years now, adopted in 2008. Kansas Association of Community College Trustees, Dr. Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. KACCT has not met since our last meeting, and our next meeting is in June, but I would like to take a few minutes to amplify a couple of things that have been said today, both by your remarks of the Kansas Board of Regents dinner last night and Dr. Sopcich's report. In the essence of reaching out by the Kansas Board of Regents to community college, the community colleges were invited to be on a panel yesterday afternoon in front of the monthly Board of Regents meeting, and I was honored and privileged to represent Johnson County Community College along with my colleague from Pratt and from Barton County Community College. I also had the privilege of sitting next to a board member, although technical schools don't have trustees. They had a representative there to speak about the technical colleges, and he was from Northwest Technical School in Kansas. Also on the Board of Education for 32 years, K through 12 Board of Education for 32 years. And so it was really helpful for me to sit by him and hear that while their superintendent of schools just retired, and they'd combined the superintendent with the elementary principal, I think they have less than 500 students K through 12. They work through the Kansas School Boards Association, and evidently, if I heard him right, there are currently 65 openings in the state of Kansas for superintendents and principals. They had 5 applicants, interviewed 2. And so, but he was excited because for the first time in many years, their K through 3 enrollment was up a few kids. Now, keep in perspective that if the K through 12 is less than 500, that K through 3 growth is maybe misrepresented by a certain percentage of growth, but he was optimistic. And so I said, why is that? And he said, well, interestingly, we have young farmers moving back into the area. And if you have followed western Kansas, you know that moisture is kind of important, and the farming industry is kind of important related to that. And so it just made me pause and think of the challenges that our colleagues have around the state trying to provide an equitable and appropriate education for their children. So that was very interesting. The charge we had was to talk about attainment practices and community outreach, and Dr. Sopcich has mentioned some of that attainment. I'm so pleased that we have a talented staff, Dr. Weber, Dr. McLeod, Kate, others, Terry Schlase, to help provide information for the report that I gave. And I think sometimes when we look at Dr. Sopcich's report and its many pages, as trustees, I'm challenging us to make sure we look at that detail. One of the items I spoke to yesterday was the CoLab Center. And if you look at that report again, and you look at what happened in January, we've expanded from 45 to 68 hours. We've had 97 events, 1,764 attendees, impacting almost 850 students in community outreach. And the Board of Regents is interested in, okay, what are we doing to help engage and align students' core work of study with a job or a career opportunity. And I believe our CoLab, our collaboration lab is just a very powerful tool in that regard, and I had the privilege of reporting on that. Our honors program has gone up to 160 hours of community service. We'll be recognizing those students at graduation with certain banners. And again, the idea is to have purposeful and meaningful alignment of our students out in the community, hopefully to encourage and motivate them to follow through with that career. Dr. McLeod gave a nice piece of information. We say we need more money all the time, and we need more money, and I think our administrative staff has done a nice job of carving out some mini grants. They total about $500, and these are available to faculty to make decisions with and for students on programs out in community outreach into the community area. That's a real positive event. Our student advocate program, as you remember, is for first semester students, and again, to try and engage our students in purposeful and meaningful employment and community service. But I had the privilege of highlighting our PAVE program and our Student Senate President Don Whitten. As you know, the peer advisor for veterans education is PAVE. We were involved in that in May of 2016. And if you remember the last report, we were recognized. We're one of 42 colleges in the country, a partnership with the University of Michigan. And I know the faculty and staff and the audience know this, but I'm basically sharing this for the community's benefit. We were, of those 42 colleges and universities, we were named #1 in November on how we interact with students of need. And while the program is designed for veterans, it's a model for all students. Driving to Topeka yesterday, I had KCUR on. Public radio seems to be impacting a lot of us. And a report just was released by ACCT yesterday through the University of Wisconsin Hope Center, where, and I have a colleague in Wisconsin on the ACCT board who has been consistently reminding us about student wellness and mental health. And this report was conducted over 33,000 students in 70 community colleges in 24 states. It was one of the larger surveys done. And in that report, it showed that 33% of our community college students nationwide are lacking food, something to eat. I'm not saying they're starving, but food is a big issue. It doesn't relate to geographic area. It doesn't relate to inner city pockets of poverty. It appears to be across the country, all segments. And interestingly, almost 14% of those students are homeless. So if we think about it, I'm hungry, I have no place to sleep, I may have children I'm putting in school, I'm trying to increase my education as well. The challenge of a portion of our community college students is very challenging. And I, Dr. Sopcich, want to commend you and our staff on the variety of programs we have to help students be successful. And the reason I was so proud to talk about Don Whitten is if you visited with him, and I shared with the Board of Regents, here's a young man in his middle 30s. He's done a few tours on behalf of our country, defending our country in the Middle East. And when you hear Don Whitten talk about the pride he has in this PAVE program, and when he sits down and says, you know, we had 113 interactions, 265 outreach attempts, and a cohort of over 70 students, and I believe we've helped some students with mental depression and suicide prevention. And so my challenge to the Board of Regents is maybe we shouldn't be thinking about student attainment as much as we should be thinking about student wellness, because with wellness perhaps comes a better chance for attainment. So I'm just pleased to have represented the college in that regard. And Dr. Sopcich, I for one, again, very much appreciate those pages and pages of detail. And I would challenge all of us to dig down a little bit deeper and understand what in the world it is our faculty and staff and students are doing on this campus every day to help students find just a little bit more success and maybe get a job and improve their lifestyle. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Cook. And we received very positive reviews at the Board of Regents meeting dinner last night, about your presentation on the panel. So you're kind of a rock star in the Board of Regents, so expect some more invitations probably. And
Thank you.
the foundation report will be by Ms. Ingram, Trustee Ingram, so I don't think we have a foundation report. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is a group of routine items that have been reviewed by committees or otherwise and are ready for approval in one motion. Any member of the board can pull any item off the consent agenda, so it can be debated and discussed separately. Is there any item on the consent agenda that anybody would like to discuss separately? If not, I'm ready for a motion to approve the consent agenda as published.
So move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. We have no executive session tonight. It is 5 till 6. I think we'll just linger here for an hour or so. Just, with that,
You beat my record.
is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Great meeting, Greg. Thank you.
You beat